News! You've heard already that Usyk's next opponent has been announced. The venue, the date, it has all been decided. He's going to be making his heavyweight debut on October 12th at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago against Tyrone Spong of the Netherlands. A relatively unheralded opponent. You know, this isn't one of the who's who guys in the heavyweight division. It's not a name like a Povetkin, like a Pulev or someone like that. But better still, he does service what Usyk is looking for, and that's debuting against a full-fledged heavyweight. Lest we forget, this is Usyk's maiden voyage into the granddaddy of weight classes. Tyrone Spong
is a heavyweight.
He sports a professional record of 14-0, 13 KOs, hefty knockout percentage, though at what level has yet to be determined. We really don't know how good this guy is or isn't, due to the fact that the level of competition he's been facing is what you would expect a guy who's got a record of 14-0. You know, it's not world-class guys. It's not killers. It's not the top 10 elites at the weight, though I'm not expecting him to have fought those kinds of people just yet. I'm not critical. Guy with a 14-0 record, that's a guy who's still making his bones as a professional.
Basically.
That much is obvious. Better still, Tyrone Spong does serve the purpose of giving Usyk someone to debut against, dip his toe in the pool of the heavyweight division with some intrigue. And I just want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. You know, a lot of times, when you have an unheralded opponent, a lot of people are very quick to write the opponent off. You know, they figure that if the guy was any good, they would have heard of him without actually having seen the guy in action, you know, taking stock of what the fighter is capable of or what he's not capable of. They figure, I never heard of the guy, so he must be some kind of tomato kid. And that's really not the case. And you can't make an assessment of how good a guy is or isn't if you haven't seen the guy in action, which allows me to segue into my assessment of Tyrone Spong.
He's pretty good.
All things considered, he's not that bad at all. Even for this level, this early stage, when a fighter is earning his stripes, making his bones as a professional, Tyrone Spong exhibits certain qualities, certain characteristics that make him appear as a guy who, yeah, he's got a future. You know, even if he loses that Usyk fight, he does have something to build on because he's a decent fighter. What's immediately apparent about Tyrone Spong, a guy who's only 14-0 as a professional, what's immediately apparent is he fights a very tight fight. He fights behind his jab, uses it, picks his spots, takes his time with his shots. This is a guy who exhibits poise, which is admirable. As early as it is in this guy's career as a pro boxer, it's admirable that he exhibits poise, that he's not just running in there swinging for the fences, compromising defense for offense. Nah, takes his time, fights behind the left hand, solid defensive prowess even at this level, and solid counter shots. You can see almost immediately that this is a guy who's got an affinity for getting on his front foot, being the aggressor, but he's not compromising defense for offense. He's still a responsible fighter whilst doing so. I'd have to say that, you know, if we're trying to gauge the defensive prowess of Tyrone Spong in retrospect with other guys who are also competing at the same level as he is at this point, he exhibits more defensive prowess than, say, a Tom Schwartz, an Otto Valen.
Those kind of guys.
That even though Tyrone does seem to have an affinity for fighting on the front foot and making things happen, he's more well-rounded than those guys are. He's more balanced while he's doing it than those guys are. Decent situational awareness, catching shots on the gloves or changing positions after firing a shot as to not still be standing there admiring his work should something come back at him, you know? He's got these characteristics, these traits that show that he's a well-rounded boxer. He's just untested at the world level, on the world scene, on the world stage. You know, that's really, you know, the guy's drawback, that if he has a drawback, that would be it. You know, say that this guy, you know, he just doesn't have the experience. That would be the drawback, that, you know, more often than not, this guy's fights, they don't make it past the third round, and he's only ever been 10 rounds once. He's yet to face any real adversity as a professional, so that would be the drawback, that this guy's not battle-tested at the elite level, the upper echelon guys. But the intrigue, where the intrigue lies, is that while Usyk is battle-tested, he's battle-tested as a cruiserweight, not a heavyweight. We don't know that this guy gets through with some fucking phantom punch, some strange kind of shot. He nails Usyk with it, and Usyk can't take it. You know, we don't know that. So that's where the intrigue is. That's the sizzle. That's the selling point. That at the end of the day, this is Usyk, the man, the lineal champion from the cruiserweight division, making his debut against a full-fledged heavyweight.
How's he gonna look?
In that, it gives us a window of insight into what Usyk's power is like in this weight class. You know, can he hurt this guy? How soon does it take him to do so? How many shots? Does it have to be a sustained attack? Can Usyk contend with this guy's power? Because he does appear to have a very respectable punch. As I stated earlier, he does fight a pretty tight fight, compact hooks, fighting behind his jab. He appears to be looking for one good counter shot to end the night. That's where the poise comes in, that this guy, he's not a slave to the moment. He's not trying to draw the guy out into a war. Rather, he's looking for a window of opportunity to hit a guy with a counter shot. Hit him with a shot that he doesn't see while he's open. Hence all of the early knockouts that he's piled up so far in his 14 pro fights. Those things in mind, it is an interesting situation because there's not a huge physical discrepancy between these two guys. You look at the tail of the tape and they're both in the same neighborhood. We know that Usyk likes to throw combinations, likes to throw punches in bunches. That would provide Tyrone a window of opportunity to hit Usyk between the punches, provided that he has the kind of timing, the kind of accuracy it would take to do so. But I reiterate, that's the selling point. That's the intrigue. And in that way, I have no complaints about Tyrone as an opponent choice. Both of these guys are making their bones in their own way. Usyk is making his bones as a heavyweight. Tyrone is making his bones as a professional. This is a step up in competition for him. And because they're both meeting, under these circumstances, both guys have something to prove. Alexander Usyk with his undefeated record of 16-0, and Tyrone Spong with his undefeated record of 14-0. Though, don't kid yourself. They're both undefeated. They both more or less got the same number of fights, but the difference is Usyk is battle-tested, just as a cruiserweight. At heavyweight, that is the purpose that Tyrone Spong services. Our first look at what Usyk is capable of now that he's up there with the big boys. So with those things in mind, I have no complaints about the fight. It's a fight that makes sense. No complaints about the opponent choice. It's two guys that have both got something to prove, some experience to gain, relatively speaking, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in October on DAZN. Keep your eyes peeled for that in the coming weeks.
All my fights are close.
They're all close.
Against top competitors. And how about you, sir?
How about you, sir? They're close.
How about you, sir?
I whitewash my fight. I get them out of
there. Your last guy coming up from 135.
It doesn't matter.
Calling you out.
It doesn't matter. I won every round.
You won every round, but
you'd have fought him. It'd have been a rough, tough fight.
You won every round, but you ain't hurt him one time.
You'd have been in a barn burner.
You won every round, but you
would have been in a barn burner with him. When have you had the easy fight where you just win?
Did you hurt Mike
Garcia? Doesn't matter. I wasn't trying to.
You weren't trying.
Did you hurt Kell Brook?
Oh, so that's what we do.
Did you hurt Kell Brook?
We get in the ring. I was trying to hurt Kell Brook.
Did you hurt him?
I believe I did.
You didn't.
I believe I did.
You didn't.
But don't flip it. You all of a sudden you're not trying to hurt somebody.
There's a part of the onion there I want to peel back a little bit. You're coming off arguably the biggest victory of your career, certainly from the standpoint of being on the big platform, a pay-per-view date with Mikey Garcia, then unbeaten, 12-round victory, dominant. But you didn't stop him, and you said just now, I didn't want to. Why?
They said if it would have been a tactical fight, Mikey Garcia was going to beat me. They said it all throughout the whole presser until the lead up to the fight. And I made sure that I was going to show my skill set and my talent and my abilities, not only physically, but mentally, and just scoring my whole skill set. And I've been said that. And he know I've been said that.
What'd you learn from his victory over Mike?
You came on my show, Inside PBC Boxing, sat next to me.
Show.
And I said, were you mad that you didn't knock him out? You said, yeah, I was a little mad. I said, oh, I'm surprised. I would have thought the opposite. I didn't think you would be mad. You said, well, yeah, I wanted to knock him out. Now you saying you didn't even want to hurt the man.
So did I say through the whole thing I was going to knock him out?
Yeah, actually.
Through the whole lead up to the fight, did I say I was going to knock him out?
Yeah, on March 5th.
Now, I've been saying I'm going to knock you out.
But what's the point?
To lead up, I said I'm going to knock you out.
Because that's what you're supposed to say. That's how you're supposed to feel.
It's not how I'm supposed to feel. But I am going to knock you out, though.
That's not how you're supposed to
I am going to knock you out, though.
You sure?
I promise you that. I promise you.
Come get it.
You know I'm coming.
Come get it.
Coming. You know I'm coming.
Come get this right hand and this left hook.
Man, you're going to be swinging wild, and, man, you just...
will make me miss.
I am. I'm going to punish.
Errol Spence doesn't seem to have any recollection of his own quotes ahead of what was the Mikey Garcia fight. He was quoted at least 2 times, by my count, saying that he always goes for the knockout. He's always looking to put on a dominant performance, but he's always looking to stop the guy. He said it back in November of last year after the fight had been announced. It was quoted on Boxing Scene, but if the article's not enough for you, he said as much to Fight Hype.
Will this be a stoppage?
Well, I'll try to punish any fighter that I fight, but, it's definitely added motivation in this fight. Especially a fight at Dallas Cowboys Stadium in front of my hometown crowd. I'm definitely going to try to put on a great performance, one-sided performance. And if I can knock him out early, that's definitely what I'm going to try to do.
So this new narrative that if Errol Spence didn't knock Mikey out, it's because he didn't want to.
Yeah, right.
That just reads like a lot of bullshit. That's what that reads like. And you know why? Not only Errol Spence, but his supporters. You know why people are peddling this bullshit.
Why?
It's because in most instances, especially in recent memory, where a guy jumped up 2 whole weight classes for a fight, the naturally bigger guy got the stoppage, like he's supposed to, whereas Errol Spence, you know, it went to the cards. I mean, it was obviously a dominant showing. It was obviously a fight that he won. But it does communicate something about Errol Spence, that perhaps his power really isn't as advertised. Because how could Mikey Garcia be in there with the quote-unquote boogeyman, one of the most devastating punchers at the weight,
Supposedly,
and absorb as much punishment as he did and still see the final bell? Having not been knocked down, having not taken a knee, having not even so much as been stunned throughout the course of a 12-round fight. You look at the CompuBox stats for this thing, you know. Errol Spence landed a grand total of 345 punches on a guy who hadn't fought so much as a Rod Salka
Was fighting back.
in the welterweight division. Mikey Garcia was highly inexperienced at this weight, not battle-tested, and if Errol Spence's reputation is what people say it is, if he really is that guy, you know, the boogeyman, you know, the most devastating guy at the weight, this, that, and the other, then you would have expected that he stopped Mikey Garcia. You would have expected that he would have at least knocked him down at some or several points in the fight, yet none of that happened.
Man down?
He clearly won the fight. I mean, there's no debating that, but I myself was expecting a stoppage. I myself was expecting him to hurt Mikey Garcia, and I said as much in several videos leading up to the fight. I'll leave the links to those videos in the description box.
He's supposed to stop him.
So the fact that he didn't, the fact that not only did he not get the stoppage, he never really hurt the guy. He never knocked him down, and this is a guy who came up straight from 135, having fought Robert Easter for his IBF title, unifying it with his WBC. He jumps from 135 straight into 147, and Errol Spence has got to take him to a decision? I'm sorry, but that's mediocre. That's mediocre.
Mediocre.
I mean, imagine what the reception would have been had Kell Brook heard the final bell against Gennady Golovkin. Imagine what the reception would have been if Amir Khan heard the final bell against Canelo Alvarez. Imagine what the reception would have been if Rigo would have heard the final bell against Vasyl Lomachenko. As much shit as people were talking ahead of that fight, you know?
2 years worth.
Imagine if Rigo would have heard the final bell. But none of those guys heard the final bell. If they didn't fucking get dropped and stopped, they quit. Whereas Errol Spence is supposed to be this Lord of the Ring.
Huh?
Pun intended. He's supposed to be the Lord of the Ring, but he's got a lightweight going the distance with him. A lightweight who is not battle-tested at welterweight. Well, pardon me for saying so, but yeah, you won. But you're supposed to be able to win. You know, that's mediocre. There's nothing to celebrate there. And I think that this is why Errol Spence has all of a sudden deferred to this new narrative, that if he didn't stop Mikey, it's because he didn't want to. That's the beauty of this Sean Porter fight. Let's talk about Sean Porter. We see that ahead of this Spence unification fight, Sean, Kenny Porter, they've enlisted the aid of David Benavidez. Tall drink of water, big kid, even as far as super middleweights go. The former WBC champion, now WBC title contender. They've enlisted his aid in the preparation for the Errol Spence fight. And I have to say this about the Porters and the Porter way. One thing that you've got to give these guys is they know how to prepare for a fight. And that win or lose, nobody has an easy out against Sean Porter. Nobody. You know? What you have to give Sean, what you have to give Kenny, is they know how to devise a game plan as such to test, really test, the man opposite the ring of them. I mean, think about it. You want an example of how preparation and the right preparation makes all the difference. You know, Sean Porter was known as a pressure guy, a guy who gets, way inside, comes forward, roughhouse tactics, smothers the other guy's work. He was known for that. He was famous for that. But when he fought Yordenis Ugas, that wasn't the case. They made the adjustments. They made the necessary changes to make it competitive and win the fight. Now, Omar Figueroa is a pressure fighter the same way that Sean Porter was considered a pressure fighter. But we see the difference in their performances, don't we? We see that Omar Figueroa was getting his fucking clock cleaned in there, whereas Sean made it competitive. He showed more poise and more boxing than he has in previous instances. This is one example of how Kenny and Sean know how to make, the right fight plan to, at minimum, test the other guy. And testing the other guy, in the case of Errol Spence, that's important. Because this guy's getting all these accolades for doing what exactly? Decisioning a lightweight who came up 2 weight classes? What, stopping Lamont Peterson? A fighter who we all knew was past his best days. What, dropping Chris Algieri? I mean, the idea here is, is that Spence is a good fighter. We know he's a good fighter. But thus far, the only legitimate test that he's actually had was that Kell Brook fight. And that Kell Brook fight has an asterisk on it because we know what Kell Brook was coming from.
Ass whooping, weight cut, eye surgery.
And that fight was what? 2 years ago or over 2 years ago, and that was the last time that Spence faced a legitimate test. He wasn't pushed by Ocampo. He wasn't pushed by Mikey Garcia. He wasn't pushed by Lamont Peterson. And the thing is, no one was expecting him to be pushed by those fighters. Whereas Sean Porter, he's got the ingredients to push just about anybody. That's the intrigue, you know? That's why, in spite of not being a fan of PBC's business practices, I am a fan of this fight because this is a genuinely intriguing situation that will reveal more about Errol Spence. Is he really who people say he is? Or, you know, is this just fan enthusiasm that sums up his reputation? This fight, you know, Mikey Garcia, you decision a guy like that who hasn't done anything, isn't tested in the welterweight division, and now you're fighting Sean. Sean, who actually has a reputation for being able to take a punch, a hard punch, and keep coming after a guy, keep applying the pressure, and it makes for one of the most intriguing situations Errol Spence has ever been in. Because if you couldn't knock out or even knock down a Mikey Garcia, the odds of you being able to do it to Sean Porter, you know, they're slim to nil. But let's say that Errol Spence does knock out Sean Porter. Let's say he does knock him down. That he wins in dominant fashion, but he gets the guy out of there. Well, that really would be saying something, wouldn't it? And that would redeem him for not having finished the naturally smaller guy in Mikey Garcia. So therein lies the intrigue. Therein lies the sizzle. And I think that Sean does have what it takes to test Errol Spence in ways that he hasn't been tested yet. So I'm looking forward to that fight.